Today in this run, we are going to be breaking down and taking a look at a 17 Ara'kara run that I was able to get done last week. We are actually running Retribution Paladin, Survival Hunter, Outlaw Rogue for this, and we are being accompanied by a Resto Shaman. Resto Shamans are very powerful this season. They have really good throughput, but one thing that they bring that no other healer really can, well, outside of priests, is they increase your group's max health by kind of a significant amount through Ancestral Vigor and Downpour. So a lot of these scarier mechanics in a dungeon, like bolts or large group AoE damage, is somewhat nullified by having just 20% more stamina with a well-played Resto Shaman. But anyways, let's get into the run. We're going to talk about everything I did right, wrong, mistakes we made, as well as my cooldown usages, as well as the route and what mobs to look out for. So starting off, we're going pretty slow in this run. What we're going to do is we're going to be stopping at the bottom of the stairs and handling these 3 crawler packs. This is a lot of groups tend to want to pull bigger here. I just don't. I think it depends on your comp, but I just think keeping it slow and steady often will win this race. Ara'kara, as most people know, is a very, very easy key. So there's no reason to pull big, because the bigger you pull, the more risk you have of wiping, and a wipe could kill the key, but if you're clean, generally it won't. So anyways, there's 3 colors in this pack. You need a couple of poison dispels. Luckily, we have myself, the Ret Paladin, we have Poison Cleansing Totem, and hunters can dispel themselves whenever they feign death. Our Paladin is now going to get the tailoring thing, but as you can see here, he'll jump off the cliff, and he falls to his death. So he definitely doesn't happen again in this run. We'll continue going here in a second. So these crawlers are going to take a little bit longer to die than they usually would. What's nice about the crawlers, though, is once they're at 30% health, they're pretty much going to kill themselves just by blowing up. They'll do the Toxic Rupture cast. As long as you don't interrupt this or stun this basically channel, when it expires, it'll just kill the mob, but it also does a ton of damage to anyone inside that circle, so you just want to kite it out. We're trying to get these 2 attendants together because we just don't have the coordination to lock down 3 caster mobs. So what we're going to do is we're just going to focus down one of these attendants. We're killing Star, and once Star dies, I will chain it into the next pull. The only thing we have to be aware of is that the Ret Paladin, once he picked up that tailoring thing from the corpse of the one spider thing, I don't know what they're called, it can stun a mob for 11 seconds or 12 seconds. So you do want to chain because it has a 1 minute like a 1 minute timer. You can only have it for a minute. So we do have to pull eventually. We stun the mini boss on that so we can finish off the other attendants. We knocked them to the mini boss, and now I am watching the fear kick. The fear needs 1 melee kick, and the rest of the bolts need to be watched by other melee in your group. So the next couple of bolts will go off. Actually, we do have our shaman kick. Our rogue kick's going to cycle back up. Doing this mini boss by itself, is it the most effective? No. But is it the safest? Yes. And so the idea for my run when I came into this is I looked at our comp and I was like, well, we have 3 DPS that generally just do a ton of damage. They don't really need me to pull around like big cooldowns like I would with an Ellie Shaman or an Unholy DK. So we can hold W, and as long as everyone is doing their damage properly, we should time the key. All right, we are pulling these crawlers. The 1 attendant, I'm going to be setting focus to it to make sure we're getting kicks. Once we get a kick on it, we're going to knock it towards this ping, and I'm going to continue pulling in some of these crawlers. Flyers. Now, flyers are actually pretty scary for a tank or whoever has threat on them. They put on this nasty, nasty bleed that when you get to like 3, 4, 5 stacks as a tank, gets pretty problematic. Now, if you're a dwarf, obviously you can remove it with bleeds. If you're a paladin tank, you can obviously bubble it. You can always call for bop, but obviously bop removes threat or drops threat for you. So as a tank, you don't really want to be calling for that. I only went to 1 stack there because I think some of the bleeds went on some other people, but you do want to be careful of flyers throughout this whole first area. The crawlers, ironically enough, really I don't find the crawlers all that scary, especially as a Brewmaster monk. We're able to dodge a lot of their attacks. Their attack cadence is fairly slow, so it gives us time to get elusive brawler rolling. Our hunter died to standing in the circle on the ground, but basically all we're doing is we're watching out for these poisons, and we're dispelling them as soon as we can. So it's going to go on our rogue. We're going to get dispelled by the PCT. Then I'm going to dispel the next. He also dwarfed, which is a really good heads up play by him. And now that we're waiting for our DPS, I'm not chaining. Generally what I do is I'll start chaining more stuff in this area as these crawlers start to get low. But when you're down a DPS, obviously things are going to die much slower. So there are going to be a couple of flyers in this pull. So I do want to be careful of that bleed. This is when I'm going to probably want to use a defensive if I have one. Celestial Brew generally is fine, but you can always use things like Dampen Harm or Fortifying Brew. There we go. Words are hard. You got to excuse me. I just woke up, so I'm doing this raw. So there is a poison on our rogue. We get the sack dispel, and then I'm going to dispel our shaman, and we're going to grab just these flyers here. Again, these are going to apply a bleed to us. But once our paladin, who just ran off to go get the second tailoring item, we're going to be able to stun the second mini boss, which is really good. So here he comes. He's coming back in. He's got his horse. I give him Tiger's Lust. And we are off to the races now that crawler is doing his channel. I get the first kick, and then we stun the mob. Now, this is probably the most dangerous mini boss. Some groups lust it. I've lusted it in the past because I don't think you technically need lust for the first boss. But if you don't lust it, the Call of the Broodcast does 3 very powerful ticks. It is physical damage, so high armor classes are generally fine. You can see that we actually threw Blessing of Protection on our Hunter. That will make him immune to the damage of it. He could have also popped Turtle. We could have bopped our Shaman, but Link kept everyone alive really, really healthy there. And then the next one's going to come out in about 7 seconds. So if ideally we kill, I do have Touch of Death for it if we get low enough. But generally what we're going to do is we're just going to pray that we can Touch of Death it. So I think we just got 2 ticks there instead of 3. But again, you could see we had Bubble, Sack, Astral Shift, plus Faint. So all... This comp is so tanky, it's kind of ridiculous. The only thing that ends up killing us in this run is walking off the edge. So we got to be careful of the edges. Alrighty, so we're going to knock the caster closer to the mini-boss. I'm going to grab the 2 crawlers off to the right, and now we're just focusing the attendant, and once we get it a little bit lower and we get a kick on it, I'm going to drag it into the next mini-boss. Again, we're in no rush while we have 2 deaths on the board. Having high sustained damage like we do is plenty. The mini-boss does spam Poison Bolt, but he generally, as long as the tank is in range, will just hit the tank with it. So it's not that dangerous to have the other caster on. You want to focus down the attendant, though, because the attendant's going to cause issues for your group, mostly from those web bolts. Again, though, having a shaman, a resto shaman, a good resto shaman, is going to alleviate that pain point because web bolts will do a smaller percentage of people's health. The cooldowns I used, by the way, I kind of forgot to mention this. The cooldowns I used throughout most of this area, this pull specifically, I don't really need any defensives. The middle area, when you're taking a bunch of crawlers, I'm just kind of chaining Dampen into Fortifying Brew, whichever I feel like using. I don't really have any script. There are some dungeons where I need certain cooldowns for certain pulls. This is not one of those dungeons. Generally, use them on cooldown, stagger them out a little bit, no pun intended, and hit Celestial Brew on cooldown and you'll be fine. All right, so 2 deaths, but we are getting to the first boss, Avanox, at 8 minutes. So that is a kind of a weird split, but it's important to know. We are going to be lusting this boss. Ideally, you lust before the 10-minute mark, so we are getting that done. Without the 2 deaths, we would have been here at about 7:30. If we lusted the second mini-boss, it would have been a little bit better, but we ended up just doing it here. Basically, every time Alerting Shrill happens, that's the more dangerous cast. Gossamer Onslaught does similar damage, but over a longer period of time, so you have time to basically heal up. Now, one thing I did there was right after Alerting Shrill ended, I turned around and I chi bursted at the mobs, and what that did is it applied Mystic Touch. We have a fairly decent physical comp with the Serve Hunter as well as the Outlaw Rogue, so getting Mystic Touch on those mobs is extremely important. We will basically always have a Chi Burst for every single set. So here comes Alerting Shrill. I'm then going to ideally turn here and get Chi Burst on those mobs. You'll see me cast it right now. Chi Burst will go, and I think I only ended up hitting like 2 there, but it doesn't really matter. It's important for me to stay alive. As the tank on this fight, the most important thing that we need to look out for is actually, it's not the Alerting Shrill, it's the Voracious Bite. That Voracious Bite makes us take 50% more damage. So when you have that on you, that's when you want to be rolling a defensive. You don't want to be rolling defensive just kind of whenever. It's whenever this bite happens. So now for the next 10 seconds, we're taking 50% more damage. So again, nice healthy Celestial Brew. If we need to, we'll have like Dampen Harm. I'm also playing double defensive trinket. As we're a little close, luckily we have Ring of Peace, we have Binding, we have Tar Trap. We have a lot of ways to kind of keep mobs controlled. And that'll be it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stack back up, and we're going to try to keep the poop along the poop. So we're going to be moving left here. And then we're going to pull the boss a little bit away. I think we end up doing 4 ad sets, personally. Unfortunately, this was a very weird spawn for us because of how close Avanox is to those eggs. Luckily, we're going to get through this Alerting Shrill, and then I'll be able to pull the boss away. So I'm going to send a Cheebers through the boss. It hopefully hits the ads. I don't know if I hit any there. But basically, groups hitting... I could have kept the boss maybe a little bit closer, but I didn't have ring, so I didn't feel comfortable doing it. It just came up now. I'm saving it just in case. And I think on the next set we have AoE blind. I just don't know if we're going to end up using... I can't remember if we do it here or if we do one more set. I think we do it here. So the egg actually spawns to our right. It's in poop, plus the boss is sub 30. With everyone focusing single target damage, it's actually going to be just easier for us to tunnel here. Now, tunneling is difficult to do depending on your comp. For us, we have an AoE blind, and blind lasts for about 18 seconds. So it allows the mobs just to basically stay there for a very long time. We also have Earthbind down, though I think that'll end up fading. And for the next set, we have Ring of Peace. So we're very comfortable. Not all groups have the ability to do this. Evokers, Rogues, and Vengeance Demon Hunters can keep these mobs CC'd for a very long time. Us, not so much. Unfortunately, right here, the next egg set spawned basically on top of us, so pretty much we're on a very tight timer. It's basically kill this guy or die. I don't know how our Ret Paladin died. I just noticed. I kind of forgot he died on this fight. The funniest part about this is I'm going to get a res here, and then he is going to die within me resing him within like 6 seconds. So watch very closely. We both mount up. You can see him running. He jumps, and he falls off the edge. And so he just died again. Definitely not throwing the timer at all, for sure. He ends up just releasing, because by the time we res him, it's probably faster just to release if you happen to die on the first boss. While he's not here, I'm a little skeptical on going into the next pull. I do have Swarmlord's Authority going out here. It's going to basically buy me time to get a good Celestial Brew going. And we're just going to focus down this bridge pack. Once our Ret Paladin gets here, the kick should be a little bit more tame, plus the damage should be a little bit higher. Therefore, I'll be able to chain a little bit more aggressively. The only thing we're looking out for here is the Web Mage. Web Bolts are very dangerous. Obviously, like I mentioned before, having a Resto Shaman to give us more health makes it a little bit easier. You can see that Web Bolts only do about 50% of people's health, where if you're not playing with the Resto Shaman, it's doing closer to like 70. I was going to say something. Oh, yes, the Revolting Volley or whatever it's called, the poison. It does very little damage, and the only damage it deals is while that effect is on players, but it can be healed off in almost an instant if you're good. You can also just dispel it. So generally what groups do is they let the volley go off, but what's also funny about the volley from the web mages is that they will continuously try to cast it indefinitely until it's interrupted. So basically what groups do is as it's alive and casting that ability, you just chain CC it. You just stun it, you knock it up, you blind it, and then eventually you'll let it cast. The only time I would recommend not letting it go off is when it's overlapping with the slam from the guard. As you're probably noticing at this point though, we are going right. And it's for the reason why is because I feel like the left route, and this is just me personally, is that it takes a little bit more coordination. There's more kicks, more trash. The reason people like going that way is because there's less guards, but I find the guards easier to deal with as long as you only have one mage that's alive. So basically our strategy is focus down mage. As soon as mage dies, we pull the next mage. There's only ever one caster in the group. So here we chained. Extraction strikes are the thing that the tank needs to look out for. If they overlap with the slam, it could be near lethal. Use a defensive for it, but as you can see, I'm sitting on pretty much everything. I have both trinkets. I have Dampen, Fort, Diffuse, Black Ox Brew, and I have a 10-stack Celestial Brew, which is good. But you can see here, we're going to actually let that go off, but you can see it got removed immediately. Good, well-timed healing when that cast goes off removes it, and it's not even close to lethal. Even at this level, I think the absorb on it that you have to heal off is like 1 million. Like, it's very small. It doesn't take much. Plus, we have a lot of dispels and ways to remove it. Obviously, dwarves, things like Hunter Feign, Cloak of Shadows, Bubble, dispels. Like, we have everything. Once the guard goes down, now we're waiting for a good patrol timing to be able to pull the next pack. So you can see the patrol in that upper right corner just reached the pack that we're about to pull next. So once that patrol turns around is when we're going to chain pull. Now it's just the assistant. The patrol is now leaving. So we're going to now pull this, and our focus is now, of course, the stag shell. There's only one web mage, and that's good. So once the stag shell dies, our goal is to kill the web mage next, and then we'll chain. There's not much really happening here. You can see that we're just like using everything we can to lock down this volley before it goes off. I use a paralysis, and then eventually we let it go off. It gets healed off basically immediately without any lethality. And so we're just focusing the mage. We got a distract on the patrol, which is really nice. Playing with a rogue delayed that a little bit so we could focus on getting the pull down. Again, double mage, it just takes too much coordination. We'd probably be okay with a shaman just because we naturally have more health. But I've learned over the season that pulling this area slow will get you a timed key. Ara'kara's timer is so lenient that as long as you don't have a lot of people walking off the edge of the platforms, you'll be good. And so right now our focus is technically, I'm targeting the web mage, though I should be targeting the blood guard. The blood guard makes everything take 50% reduced damage, hence why a lot of people avoid pulling these. I think if you have very strong cooldown classes, or even in this case where we have really high sustained damage, there's no reason, I don't know, I find the guards to be fairly tame. And so once the blood guard goes down, we'll be able to actually do normal damage here. And that's pretty much it. So now we're now all targeting the web mage. We're gonna blind the volley, and then we're gonna knock up the volley. And then I don't think we do anything else. I think we let it go off, and it gets healed off basically immediately. And that's it. Like, so the volleys, you don't want them to go off at the wrong time. I think if you have a healer who's not prepared for it, or it's overlapping with like the slam from one of the guards, it could be very, very dangerous. We're going to knock in that other stag shell from our hunter, and then we're able to cleave these guys down. Now, a lot of groups tend to skip the next pack, mostly because it's a guard. A guard makes everything around it take 50% reduced damage. For us, I just pull it. I like the route. We're tight on time right now, but we're not like we're gonna time the key. So what I like to do is I like to pull it. You can pull the boss with that. You can skip around it. It has true sight, I believe, but a rogue or some classes can get into the boss arena, and when you pull the boss, it snaps everyone down inside. That's not going to be showcased here, obviously. But if you're playing with an evoker, playing with a rogue, playing with a vengeance demon hunter, these kind of classes can do that. I believe there's I think warlock, like you can warlock gate skip maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. Anyways, I dampen on the start of this pull because the blood workers plus the blood guard can do a lot of physical damage up front, and we don't really necessarily have a celestial brew rolling from the last pull because it's 2 stag shells and 1 caster who was pretty much just trying to like cast half the time. So I like to use a defensive here. The next boss is, again, Brewmaster. This is one reason why Brewmasters are really good this season. And while they aren't prop paladin level, they are one of the better tanks. It's because Stagger is just so inherently good against boss designs that generally when you get to fights like this, the tank is never a concern. A tank for most encounters will never be an issue. The first debuff always goes on the tank. It gets sent out immediately. Well, okay, I shouldn't say always. It goes on whoever pulls. So if you want someone who can pull and can remove the debuff immediately, you can do that too. But for me, I'm just going to pull. Generally what I do is I use diffuse magic. I used it a little late there. I don't know why, if I'm being honest. Generally, I use diffuse immediately. We're baiting the frontal away from my group, and we're just focusing on the web mage. This fight cadence, the first part of this fight always works the same. The next part of the fight works a little differently, and I'll talk about that in a second. Anyways, always cleave down the mage. Never really focus it unless there's too many up. When there's only one alive, just get kicks on it and hit boss. Standing on the right side of the circle allows it so that the frontal is always basically in the green poop, giving your group the most amount of room to work with. This isn't as important when you're playing with melee, like a full melee comp like we are, but when you're playing with some casters, it's nicer for them to be able to stand in the back of the circle or in the middle of the circle to not have to move as much. And then we're going into phase 2, or I guess phase 1 again, since that was intermission, I guess we'll call it. Aiming the frontals away from my group is generally the play here. Now this phase has the chance to spawn 2 or 3 adds. Personally, I prefer getting only 2 adds because I don't like having to try to manage 3. You have to kind of focus them down when you get 3. When you only get 2, it's a little bit easier just to cleave them down naturally, and the fight cadence feels better. But anyways, I like to try to keep all the mobs positioned in the center of the room, mostly because the boss will eventually return to the center of the room to do his intermission. As long as you're killing 1 before the next ad comes out, you're generally going to feel a little bit better. Knocking it towards the center. Now here's the chance where we might get 2 ads or 3 ads. So there was our second ad that we just killed. We got a second burrowing charge, so we're going to get a third web mage. For some reason, not sure why. Sometimes the boss doesn't like to do this Eye of the Swarm cast. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't know if this boss actually is a percentage-based boss or not. Is it? I don't know. Anyways, kill ads. We unfortunately have one that's kind of out in the poop. We're going to get a kick on it. Probably from our shaman. Oh, I parried it on accident. I'm so dumb. We kicked it, but then I parried it. Not good. But we're going to pretty much just... I'm focusing it now at this point. What's nice is I can get Touch of Death on it, so I can get a damage increase to finish out the rest of the boss. And then, essentially, what we can do, as long as the ad spawns are good, we can CC the mobs out. So when they spawn, we can get like a paralysis on it. We can get, I think that's really, I guess we get frozen trap or blind. So luckily for us, the ad came from right here. I'm going to parry it. Oh, but we broke it, but that's fine. You can CC it though, if you want to leave it out and just focus down boss. I thought maybe I did that in a 16. There was one run I did where we successfully kept the ad out and we just killed the boss. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. That's pretty much it. Again, you're going to see that my defensives are mostly still available. The reason for this is, first, boss doesn't really do that much damage. Second, I'm going to want all of my defenses for the next couple pulls. Ugh. I bought non-dairy creamer from the store, and that tastes like poop. Okay, I shouldn't say I bought it. My brother bought it because he can't read, but that's okay. Anyways, moving on. We're going to do this next part of the dungeon, I think in 2 pulls. Sometimes you can split up into 3. I've seen a lot of groups go down center. I don't like going center, especially with the big guard in the center of the kind of, like, I don't know, area. He does unavoidable AoE damage, unavoidable stun. The rest of this pull, or the route that we're going to end up using, is going to just be a basically like it's all tank damage. Our rogue got threat somehow. I don't know if that was the bloods or if that was like drones gashing slash or whatever it's called, but our rogue did go down, so this pull's going to take a little longer than usual. I did get the drones in eventually, and then we're going to basically try to play as defensive as possible. I'm trying not to use my defensives till the next pull. I did send a dampen harm here. Ring of Peace is a really good tool for kiting as well as keeping your group safe from these carrier leaps. You can Ring of Peace a little bit out in range. Your melee can stand there, your range can stand there, and when the carriers try to leap, they can't connect with the target, so therefore they don't do damage. I am praying to the heavens right now that I don't die. And yeah, now we're just rolling all of our defensives. Because we had our rogue die, this pull is taking way longer than it should have. And because of that, I had to expend more defensives than I should have. Generally, what I try to do is I try to use like Dampen with Celestial Brew here, as well as Healer Throughput. And then the next pull, we're going to do something that's actually just as, if not more, scary. So I prefer to have actually all my defenses available for it if I can. Unfortunately, though, not going to have that opportunity, but we'll make it work. So our 2-chest tremor is just now fading, so that gives us about 6.5 minutes. The last boss we need about 4.5 for, so as long as we can get through this pull relatively cleanly, we should be good. I get rooted almost immediately, which is obviously not fun. Essentially, we just need kicks on these volleys. As long as volleys don't go off, we'll be fine. Our Rep Paladin, for some reason, is just now getting here. Not sure what he was doing. Oh, I think he was grabbing the tailoring buff. So he stunned one of the mobs. Unfortunately, I didn't really notice until now. Stunning one of the Overseer mobs is fine, but it doesn't really like benefit you as much. You would generally use it on like the, if you were going down center, you'd use it on the giant guard in the middle, but we are going to the left, so it doesn't really matter that much. The scariest thing here isn't necessarily Overseers for the tank. It's actually going to be the damage of these grasping slashes on the tank. Not only does it slow you, but it just does a ton of damage. And then on top of that, I have to like dodge these things. And I'm trying to like roll and not fall off the edge. I almost did there, and that would have been pretty much game over if I did. I somehow managed to stay on. I don't know how. I'm also losing thread on these carriers. I pulled them by using Blackhawk statue on the edge of the room. When you don't have Tiger's Lust available, this slow can be really obnoxious. I do have Tiger's Lust here now, which is good. So I'm able to kind of get through that. Once most of the smaller guys go down, the guys who do the grasping slash, that's when this pull becomes a little bit more tame for the tank. Now we're kind of back into this corner. Try not to get rooted in that. And we're good. The pull is slowly starting to die down a little bit here. And this will give us like a little bit over, I think gives us like 101% count, but that is a-okay. 2 carriers left, so whatever they're worth 0.62 each, so it's like 100. So 4.5 minutes is exactly what we're going to need for this this boss, as long as we're clean. And so I'm going to get right into pulling. I'm assuming our shaman is going to be fine. He's in position. Now the only problem that I don't like, or the only thing I don't like about the comp that we have currently, is that we have 4 melee. I like the consistent damage, but having 4 melee is really cringe for this fight. Luckily, we do have a lot of poison dispels. Who did I dispel? No. Normally what I do in most runs is I try to dispel range or I dispel the healer, but we already had discussed that our paladin is, I think, dispelling our healer. So I'm free to dispel myself or whoever I want, really. Even if, as a tank, even if you, okay, I should say as a Brewmaster, if you just sit with the poison on you, it's really not that scary. Just you use a defensive or a Celestial Brew each time, and the rest of the fight is pretty tame. And every once in a while, you're going to see me walk into a black blood pool on the ground, but then I like leg sweep or I just stun it or ICC or Tiger's Lust or kick. This is to keep the area clear. A couple of people in our group are able to not have to go into the kind of goop on the ground. And because of that, we don't need all of the pools available. And so trying to keep melee clear is going to make it easier for us. So I believe our rogue and myself don't need the pools at all. I don't know if he's like, I don't think I don't know what the rogue's doing, if I'm being honest. This rogue is insane. CL is an absolute gamer, Giga Chad. So I'm moving out a little bit. I don't even know if I'm dispelling here. I can't remember. I don't think I am. I think I'm just letting these go off natty, which is probably not the play. It's probably better to dispel, but that's okay. But as you can see, I'm sitting on all my defensives. This is kind of a tame fight. We're trying to stay in melee as much as we can. I will do my best to get threat on these bloods running around. The blood melees, though, are really not that dangerous. You can see that our shaman is pretty much just tanking one. His health isn't really going down. We're going to roll out. Transcendence. I could be getting a little bit more damage here by filling those globals, but I'd rather be safe than sorry because I know based on our timer, we've been in combat for 2 minutes. We have 2:15 left. Therefore, with a sustained damage comp that doesn't really rely on cooldowns, we're probably going to be pretty good on time. So, yeah, we're feeling good. I don't really know what else to say here. There isn't much. Like, I'm just kind of sitting on my defensives, so this fight's not that scary. You can use Touch of Death like I just used there to get a 5% damage increase. Luckily for me, I think it also comes up at the end of the fight that I can use for another 5% damage increase or to kill the boss. I find that I don't know actually what technically grants you more damage. I don't know if the Touch of Death is better to kill the boss quicker or if it's better to like use it for the damage increase, but I'd imagine that at least at 40%, getting a 5% damage increase is really good, and that may be a reason why we actually were able to time this. Because that does add up. That's 5% more damage on everything. So, like, Flurry Strike, Exploding Keg, it's all good. And so, yeah, we're going to end up timing this run with about 10-ish seconds remaining, which is very tight. We had a lot of stupid deaths, though. We had a lot of deaths to just people walking off the edge. We somehow had a rogue die to, like, auto attacks right before entering this area, which is not his fault. I don't actually know why that would have happened there. But it did. And I get rooted out here because the blood died, like, right underneath me. Now, we have a lot of stuff here, so I'm going to run in and I'm going to Ring of Peace. The Ring of Peace probably wasn't the best play. I should probably just Tiger's Lusted because it made ads go all over the place, but I wanted to basically clear the center of the room for my group because it was getting a little hectic. And then having a lot of these ads up too, I think helps the Survival Hunter with more single target damage. I think they have like a thing that explodes and can kind of do, not quadratic damage, but it basically like gets him additional cleave. We're going to spread out for the last thing, and then we're going to have Touch of Death here and finish up the boss, which is very nice. So we timed it with 10 seconds remaining, big 17. It was not a clean run. I'm excited to get back in here and hopefully attempt another 17. This is probably the last, I guess, like commentary for Ara'kara I'm going to be doing this season because probably not getting an 18. I don't know any other 17s that will probably time, and then having it, even if we do time like a 17 Miss or 17 Dawn or something, the chance it's going to roll into an 18 Ara'kara is, pretty low. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, that's the run. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm looking very, I'm very much looking forward to the next season as well. That's just around the corner. Now that the season is kind of winding down, I'm going to try to get out a few more commentaries with some of these higher runs just to finish off the season. And then I'm going to be prepping for the next one. Anyways, I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.